Hello, in this document I am going to talk about John Keats' biography and his work as a poet. But first, let's say something of what is Romanticism. Romanticism was an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement that originated in Europe toward the end of the 18th century. The movement validated strong emotions as an authentic source of aesthetic experience, placing new emphasis on such emotions as apprehension, horror, and terror. Although the movement was rooted in the German Sturm and Drang movement, the ideologies and events of the French Revolution laid the background from which both Romanticism and the Counter-Enlightenment emerged. In English literature, the group of poets now considered the key figures of the Romantic movement includes William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and the much older William Blake. In contrast to Germany, Romanticism in English literature had little connection with nationalism. Now, this is something about John Keats. John Keats was born on 31st October 1795 in London. His father worked at a livery stable but died in 1804. His mother remarried but died of tuberculosis in 1810. Keats was educated at school in Enfield. When he left at 16, he was apprenticed to a surgeon. He wrote his first poems in 1814. In 1816, he abandoned medicine to concentrate on poetry. His first volume of poetry was published the following year. In 1818, Keats nursed his brother Tom through the final stages of tuberculosis, the disease that had killed their mother. Tom died in December, and Keats moved to his friend Charles Brown's house in Hampstead. There he met and fell deeply in love with a neighbor, the 18-year-old Fanny Brown. He was one of the main figures of the second generation of Romantic poets, along with Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley, despite his work only having been in publication for 4 years before his death. Although his poems were not generally well received by critics during his life, his reputation grew after his death, so that by the end of the 19th century he had become one of the most beloved of all English poets. He had a significant influence on a diverse range of poets and writers. Jorge Luis Borges stated that his first encounter with Keats was the most significant literary experience of his life. The poetry of Keats is characterized by sensual imagery, most notably in the series of odes. Today, his poems and letters are some of the most popular and most analyzed in English literature. From September 1819, Keats produced little more poetry. His financial difficulties were now severe. He became engaged to Fanny Brown, but with no money there was little prospect of them marrying. Early in 1820, Keats began to display symptoms of tuberculosis. His second volume of poetry was published in July, but he was by now very ill. In September, Keats and his friend Joseph Soubern left from the warmer weather of Italy, in the hope that this would improve Keats' health. When they reached Rome, Keats was confined to bed. John Keats died in Rome on 23 February 1821 and was buried in the Protestant Cemetery, Rome. His last request was to be placed under a tombstone bearing no name or date, only the words, "Here lies one whose name was written in water." Severn and Brown erected the stone, which under a relief of a lyre with broken strings includes the epitaph. This grave contains all that was mortal of a young English poet, who on his deathbed, in the bitterness of his heart, at the malicious power of his enemies, desired these words to be engraven on his tombstone: "Here lies one whose name was written in water, February 24th of 1821. Despite his death at the age of 25, Keats is one of the greatest English poets and a key figure in the Romantic movement. He was become the epitome of the young, beautiful, doomed poet. Finally, we have one of the most famous John Keats poems, Ode to Autumn.
To Autumn, by John Keats. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd, and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees, until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has all brimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed with the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swathe and all its twined flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press, with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them. Thou hast thy music too. While barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubbled plains with rosy hue, then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne, hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the redbreast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies.